Sorry. Jeez. Hold on. Got it. Got it. Okay. So 105, Director Stockman.
Present.
I know. Director Cheryl,
Present.
Deputy Chief Cox.
Present.
Is anyone else there?
Yes.
There, Larkin? Anyone else?
Deputy Fire Marshal Austin Seeley
Yes, present.
and Fire Marshal Gary Silva.
Fire Marshal Gary Silva.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm very sorry again that I'm late. Okay,
Okay, it looks like we have no one from the community for public comment.
are you gonna do the pledge? Are you gonna do the Pledge of Allegiance or not?
Yes, we did begin with Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, Gene. I'll begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag,
To the flag,
the United States of America, and to the republic
and to the
for
republic
which it
for which it
stands,
stands,
one
one
nation, under God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice
liberty
for
and
all.
justice for all. I see the agenda on the screen. Is that what's supposed to be on there?
Correct.
Okay.
So again, no one from the public, so we will move on beyond public comment. I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar and approval of the minutes from our last meeting on September 2nd.
Second.
We'll
Okay,
do a roll call vote. Director Stockman,
yes,
Director Cheryl,
Yes.
passes 2-0 by roll call. Thank you.
Thank you.
okay, new business.
May we review the staff report, the draft staff report that was provided today?
Yes, I can pull it up on the screen if that's helpful.
Yes, thank you.
Now you're testing my IT skills on the fly.
I'd like to put on the record that this is an outstanding report and done in record time to facilitate our ability to consider its contents for the September 22nd board meeting. Our thanks to the Fire Marshal's Office and Chief Cox for putting this report together for us in such a thorough and timely manner.
Are you guys seeing my screen by chance?
No,
Nope.
No, okay. I'll just pull it up.
I have it right here. Of course, shows my IT skills. I printed it out.
How about now? Are you seeing it now?
Yes.
yes.
Perfect. Okay. I apologize for not getting it to you sooner. We've been sending some drafts back and forth and definitely to see it. If there's any questions, we're happy to answer them.
Certainly seems like a rapid turnaround to me. Thank you. This is an excellent start. So how would this be presented at the board meeting on the 22nd? Would it go out in the board package in advance for all the directors to see? Would you read it at the board meeting itself? How would we let the public know this is the direction that's being considered?
Good question. The board report would go, or the staff report would go most likely under the Vegetation Management Committee update. It would probably encompass two things. It would encompass this staff report, and then it would probably also encompass a resolution declaring a public nuisance for those 16 identified parcels that that Austin has prioritized. So that would probably be the step, is kind of an informational staff report as well as a resolution declaring a nuisance of those lots.
And then if the public wanted to see the whole report or hear the whole report, how would they do that?
As far as seeing this staff report, this staff report will be posted as a part of the board document for the September meeting.
Okay, all right. This is just such a good report that it seems like an excellent place to start. And perhaps what we should do is now hear your ideas for next steps. Obviously, there's a funding portion, and there's and the funding, may drop into consultants, existing manpower, and additional costs for the contractors, et cetera, whatever those cost categories are. Is that how you see this going forward? Is it the next step is really allocation of resources to implement this?
That's a good question, Cynthia. One thing that we have put in the final budget is about $200,000 towards the cost of a contractor.
Right.
That's assuming those 16 lots have an average cost of $1,200 or $12,500 per lot. Get to that 200,000.
Right.
So that will be one item that comes up on the budget, the final budget, just making sure that the amount for a contractor is in there. The second piece, and maybe something that should be discussed as a piece of this, is kind of the long-term need for an additional staff person in the fire marshal's office to really manage the weed abatement and the additional unimproved parcel, and any sort of assessment that we get done, managing that process. And that may just have to be done in kind of an informational setting, or, recommendation from the community board. I will say the contract costs for personnel for CAL FIRE are very below what we budgeted. So the contract came in significantly less than what we have budgeted. So I think we need to look at not only the fire marshal's office, but what operations may need for one position, as well as another half position for the operation side. So I think it's a part of that broader conversation, but I also think it's probably the number one priority position if we have the bandwidth.
Would the fire marshal's office, would that new position there be called a WUI officer if it were to come to existence?
Potentially. I would not, Austin can speak to his day-to-day, but he office where they need to be. So if there's a construction inspection or a plan review that needs to get done, it's not uncommon for him to go and do that as well. I think it would definitely be encompass quite a big portion of their daily job, but I wouldn't say it would be the only thing they would do in the office.
Cox, this is Gene. I have lost audio. I mean, not audio, but video, and I don't know why. Is there any way you can help me?
Oh.
I still have audio, but no video.
Yeah.
Start my video. Hold on. I still have a black screen. I just have a black screen, but I can hear you all.
Okay.
And we can see you.
You
how
can?
about now?
I got it. I got it. Now I can lower my hand. Hold on. I'm gonna lower my hand. Actions, lower hand. Okay, I think I'm good, but I can't see my face anymore, but I don't care.
Well,
Can you see me? Can you see
I
me?
see you. I see you.
Okay, I won't be picking my nose then. Okay.
Well, you're
Yes, I'm sorry, I don't know
frozen.
what happened.
If
Okay.
that's any comfort, you're frozen. It's just a fixed picture.
Okay, all right.
Oh, and now it's
Okay.
just your name.
Okay, well, I'll start my video. Wait a minute. Start my video. I see you, but again, my box is just black, a little black square in the corner. Ooh, that doesn't do it.
There you go.
There it is. Okay. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened. Carry on.
Okay.
Okay.
Before I forget, Jonathan, we're jumping around a little bit, but the report that you addressed from Beverly Hills,
Mhm.
what was the cost of that? Do you have any idea what was involved in the production of that?
Yeah, I think it was under $25,000.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Not huge.
I say it's like medical stuff. Anytime you get something that has a baseline that you can compare to later and moves you forward in knowing where you're at from a healthy standpoint, I think it falls under that. So,
So this first $200,000 that is already budgeted, right? We don't need to do anything to begin that work. Is that correct? That's already available to us?
It's in the final budget that the board will be adopting this month. So
Okay.
not in the preliminary, which comes out in May, but it is in the final, which comes out this month.
Okay.
and we have a little bit of a delay time from the conversation we had 2 days ago when we met with Austin. A delay time between, determining a contractor, determining what these costs are for each individual lot. But it seems like everything moves forward and you start your ordinance and you start identifying which lots are going to be done first. All that work is the lead up work to actually having the work done. So what is your concern between putting this into an ordinance and the time for actual work to begin?
Yep. I mean, I think in all honesty, we're probably a couple months away from work happening.
Right.
Notice the property owners, then we have to go out for RFP for the actual contract itself. I think, it's probably fairly realistic in the timeline.
Okay, and then to all of you, what is the availability of contractors that do this work in this current climate of everyone rising to this need? Are there more contractors than there are? I mean, is there enough people out there that do this kind of work that's going to be able to come forward, or is that an unknown?
Yeah,
I have dealt with a few people with individual correction notices that want to be compliant, and I have had to extend several correction notices within the last few months to accommodate scheduling issues. But then again, these are private owners on private lots dealing with one at a time. So I'm not quite sure what our timeline would be or how that would vary depending. But the fact that with the 2020 lightning complex and the fact that the climate change reports and everything else, people as a whole are being more and more conscious about what's going on in their backyard. And so the availability of tree crews and landscape crews at the drop of a hat is definitely going to be few and far between. It's definitely going to be a bit of a lag time, and it's going to be set up prior with a lot of forewarning and a lot of scheduling involved. So it's not going to be something that would have like a 1 month turnaround. Is probably even way too soon. Once we get it all lined out, like Chief Cox was saying, we have to notice the property owners. They have to have a chance to do it themselves. We have to go back out and re-inspect all the lots and make sure that which ones did it, which ones didn't. So in all honesty, we're pretty far out, like as of today, but that's obviously why we're trying to get the ball rolling.
And that's what I would have expected. I guess my question was more to the expectation of how many contractors would bid on it and how many contractors are available. And is this a lucrative contract for that size company? So those will all be told by once the bid is out. So thank you.
At our last meeting, we talked briefly about various approaches to the contractor issue. whether it's on-call services like the A&E contract, or whether it's for a specific contractor to do it all, or multiple contractors as the need arises, that sort of thing. What was the most efficient? What would be the most cost effective? And what, in your opinion, would work best? Have there been internal conversations for how the structure of that contract might work best?
Yeah, typically what we do is we put it out as a bid. So we define the scope of the work, and then we send it out to bid per our procurement policy. And then we ask for sealed bids, and then we open them up, document who the lowest is, and that's who we award it to.
Are there any special considerations that we're, again, just asking because I don't know, but is it possible to say local contractor preferred, that sort of thing? Only because it just keeps the revenue in our region.
Yeah. That is a great question for legal. I know there are legal, that's a legal,
Okay.
completely legal question. I don't know the exact answer to it. I do know some agencies put in their procurement policies regarding where vendors get priority from, but I do know that that doesn't apply to every contract.
Okay, thank you. I'll go through legal and ask that question. So next steps, we're thinking about presenting motions or articles of action or whatever the correct phraseology is at the next board meeting. And we're also talking about possibly rephrasing, adding to, or substituting in the vegetative the vegetative action plan in light of this staff report. And of course, then we have, or maybe the board has, the responsibility to complete our response to Susan Casey's letter. We have sent her, the board did send her under Gary's signature, a acknowledgement letter to let her know that we have her well-considered letter and that we are responding comprehensively to it, and we'll be back to her shortly. Inviting her to please attend the next meeting, the next board meeting. So that's, that's the path that we're going to go. And I suppose our next step on that is to, drawing from the information in your staff report, start to compose a letter that's going to have a lot of blanks in it that in terms of when things might happen or whether or not her eight lots are included in our first wave of the 16 lots to be considered, whatever. And I'm not proposing that that all be true, just simply that's the nature of the letter that we'll be drafting and running back to you before we send it out to her.
Yeah, I'll just throw a suggestion out there, Cynthia. If the board does take action and vote to abate these lots, it may just be easier for Austin to give her a call and explain to her what's going on and what the process is. I don't know that the board needs to get into kind of that detail of the operation side and responding. I feel like the board's acknowledged the letter, and now Austin can follow up with what the next are.
That would be excellent. How do you feel about that? Is that okay?
That would work. Coincidentally, asking whether or not the 8 lots that she specifically referenced would be in the first wave or two. The priority system that we've been talking about in the office specifically has to do with the higher fire severity hazard zones, specifically the more vegetated stuff, the parcels that border other parcels that have houses on them. So coincidentally, strangely enough, without any favoritism, some of those parcels that she mentioned and brought up would be some of the highest priority that we have on the list. So it'd be pretty easy to take care of those relatively soon or relatively quickly, in case she has any questions about it. So
that is good news. And in terms of communicating with her directly, since I believe we said that we would respond to her letter comprehensively, may we send her, would you recommend, Chief Cox, that we just send her a follow-up and say that Deputy Fire Marshal Seeley will be, do I ever get that right?
You can just You just say Captain Sealy.
Captain
it's-
Sealy,
it's all
so
right. We
much
can shorten
easier.
it.
Okay, Captain
shorten it
Sealy, Chief Silva, done. I can do that. So is it all right if we simply send her a quick follow-up or an email and say Captain Sealy's going to get back in touch with you?
I personally, Cynthia, I don't know if that's really even necessary. I would say when Austin contacts her after the board meeting, he could simply say he's been in dialogue with the board.
Okay.
And, you know, that, I think that would serve that purpose. I understand that, you know, once we say, listen, we're going to follow up with you, and then we don't. But I think what both Chief Cox and Captain Sealy are recommending as their communication would be sufficient to what we're trying to achieve as board members.
That would
in
be
my
great.
opinion.
That would be excellent if that's enough. I just am concerned
Right.
about, the oversight. I
Yeah.
think this issue is going to get a lot of attention,
Mhm.
and that there may be individuals who are interested in tracking every move. And
Right,
I just don't want there to be,
Right.
a drop in anything we said we would do.
yeah, I agree.
But thank you very much, Chief Cox.
So
and
I,
Captain
and I
Sealy.
would think for Captain Sealy, if that's the route we're going, Chief Cox, is that maybe to the importance to the board and the communication that we've made, that Captain Sealy would follow up with an email that he's spoken to Susan, and that it was addressed and she understands, maybe, something along those lines, just that there's been follow-up and there's not a need for us as a board to reply any further.
Yeah, I can put together a meeting with Susan and discuss the finer points after the board meeting, and then I'll reply back.
Thank you.
Thank you. That sounds great. So what do you see now? We're back to what will be presented on the 22nd, and what amendments or changes or additions or substitutions for the action plan would you like to see at this time? Or are we more interested in describing the plan going forward for the public? Or are we more interested in what needs to go on in back operations to describe from a resources standpoint what we need next to go forward? Because I think the public is going to be very interested in the contents of this report and see it as a step forward. But I think that the directors, how much does it cost? We're going to need to be able to give them the facts to make the decisions they need to make about manpower and resources, and that will also allow us to start looking for additional sources of monies. For example, and I don't know if it's relevant, but Prop K monies were a big part of RCD's $1 million to do their work in Quarry Park. So may we ask for Prop K monies to do that sort of thing? I don't know. Perhaps they have to go to a nonprofit that does that, but we could work that out with any number of agencies, I would assume.
So we're in a little bit different of a situation in the sense that the Measure K money that went to RCD was to do work on public land. It was in Quarry Park, and work that we're doing and we protect is private property. So our work is we're essentially, we don't have we have a capital outlay, but we get it in revenue on the next tax roll through putting it on the property. So we actually don't have a revenue issue when it comes to taking these actions. We just have to, it has to be in the budget, it has to be in the budget cycle, and we have to have the staffing to do it. So I think as far as the action plan, we could amend the action plan to include the expansion of this veg management program as an action item, as well as exploring the wildfire assessment report for the entire district, those two items being added on there, and bring that back to the full board approval, along with the staff report that Austin provided, the resolution for declaring the nuisance, And then also adding on to that, the desire to have CAL FIRE come back with what, a staffing proposal or a staffing increase would look like to meet the challenges that we have, and kind of ask for a separate report on that that's a little more comprehensive, not just vegetation management.
That sounds excellent. So if we present all of that at this next board meeting on the 22nd, I think we're both responding to the public appropriately, as well as to the other directors who really want to know how they can support this action going forward, and giving them enough information so that they know what what it's going to take.
Mhm.
And they're going to, I think, I'm so new, but I think they're going to ask the question in terms of manpower and in terms of just resource dollar outlay for, the 12,500 per lot costs. And you've shaped it into 200,000 for this first year, and they'll look ahead to what is the pace of abatement going forward.
Mhm, mhm.
So those are the sort of questions they would be looking for. So are we, because we're dealing with abatement on private property, not going to find other sources of funding for this anywhere? There's no state allocation or other county?
Well, you have to remember this is private property, and you can't take public dollars for private good. That would be a gift of public funds.
Okay.
So public money can be used for public land. Public money cannot be used for private lands.
Got it.
That's a really big distinction to make. So that if that essentially what that means is we're not going to go out and look for additional funds for this program, because it's essentially pretty defined in the health and safety code as far as how it can be done.
Okay.
I think a big distinction to make, to wrap your head around the looking for other funds. An easier way to break it down is essentially the vegetation abatement program and the weed abatement program are annual programs that the district will carry out and will do the work for and get the contractors to do it. However, it is still reimbursed by the tax liens on the property. So in essence, it's almost like an automatic enforcement measure on private property that the private property owners need to be doing already. We're just making it happen with a contractor in the middle. And so since it's more of an enforcement of a standard that applies to everyone, if you look at it in that kind of frame of mind, then it's not really something that public dollars is really gonna be applied to, like Chief Cox is saying.
Okay, thank you. I do. Thank you. That's very helpful. I'm coming from a nonprofit world here, and there's grants for everything. So thank you for helping me sort that out. Is there ever been interest expressed in conservation groups around here, Post or Coastside Land Trust or any others, taking receivership of these individual lots that are vacant and abandoned and unresponsive and aren't going to pay their fines ever until their fines are worth more than the vacated property that they've left behind?
Good question. I'm not aware of that. That would be kind of in the land use and planning side of the county.
Okay. All right.
May I ask a question in regards to the board's relationship with the community and the action plan? Is there anything that's been received by Chief Cox or Chief Silva from the community? In other words, this is what we think you should be doing as the fire district, or these are actions we think you should be taking that we are not aware of? And I ask you that in the context of, like, we're trying to develop, has anybody presented something, and whether or not you feel it's achievable or appropriate, or do you get that? Have you had that kind of dialogue from the community to your offices? And I don't know the answer. This isn't a setup question. I'm asking the context of what, especially in the role that Cynthia and I are trying to play in meeting the community's needs, as well as guiding staff to make the appropriate actions.
I don't know. Can you guys hear me now? Did I fix the speaker?
Yes,
No.
yeah. Mhm.
Okay. I mean, no, the only thing that I see that we get the most of is with the current climate and everybody's so scared. If
Right.
everybody had their way, we would have nothing but green grass and every tree would be gone in the forest. So, I mean,
Right.
everybody's big push is they're scared to death that these trees are just going to explode and catch on fire and burn up all of El Granada and everything around us. And
Right.
so we're just trying to keep them happy. And Austin's done a great job at telling them, you know, what we need to do. But ultimately, I think what we get is everybody's just so scared and they think every tree. So it's kind of I think public information, maybe just getting it out there and maybe really explaining what defensible space means and home hardening and all that stuff about if you don't have the ladder fuels, you don't have the brush, then the trees shouldn't ignite and blah, blah, blah. So maybe us just trying to get messages out there better to
Right.
explain and let them know that every tree and every bush is not going to be, you know, spontaneous combust and burn up the community.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Yeah, we do get, like Susan Casey's letter, we get individuals who reach out with specific concerns about hazards. The office in specific a lot of complaints regarding items that people think are a community hazard. The eucalyptus is kind of the continuous concern that people bring up, and that is kind of the theme of the concern. Evacuations, eucalyptus are the big two here over and over again.
Okay. And I know within the action plan, we've identified ways from community meetings as an example to get this message out, you know, to inform and educate, you know, our neighbors. How about in specifically to this ordinance change and the results that it's positive results that will come from it? Do we have a plan to communicate that to the community outside of what's already identified in the action plan?
Not currently. Happy to, you know, do whatever's necessary to kind of shed light on what we're doing. I think that's a good idea.
Right. Okay. Thank you. And maybe that's better for open discussion with the entire board in the vegetation management report. We can bring that up as an issue that we've addressed and for input.
Yep.
The whole issue of messaging and what a communications plan or strategy might be to bring this information forward, to be sure that we're hitting all of these points, you know, to Chief Silva's point that there's home hardening that you can do. So that's the empowering the public residents to work on their own homes and educating them. And whether it's 100 feet or it's 300 feet, I know I've heard discussions of both, but just clarification of that point. And then to the general message about maintaining your lots, maintain your vacant lots. But my thought at our meeting before about a broad general message about clearing these vacant lots. Now I don't know how effective that might be, because the people who weren't maintaining their lots are not paying any attention to this. They've abandoned them in some cases. So what, in your opinion, are the points where we could make the most effective public messaging campaign?
Yep. You know, everyone receives their information a little bit differently, and I think everyone's kind of fear index is also different. So some people are very acutely aware and want to know everything, and others are very aware but don't need to know the details. And
Right.
I think it's just a matter of hitting everybody on different channels with the same information, and that goes from, you know, websites to social media to newspaper to physical letters, and it has to be comprehensive. And I think that is Something we identified for next year in the plan is, hey, how do we send out information regarding the responsibility for each property owner and landowner in the district that is, not only for habitable lands, but vacant properties, and what are the resources we can provide. So I think you're spot on that it's an important piece, but it's also fairly broad and wider than just, one action.
To the three of you then, as it relates to Cynthia and I's role within the committee and then the greater role as directors, would it be appropriate to meet with the unit's PIO and have kind of like just talk out this in rough form? Or would you consider that more into an operational role that's not purposeful to Cynthia and I's actions currently?
Yeah, I think, I always come back to let's chew what we can bite off kind of thing.
Right. Mm-hmm.
We have a pretty big mouthful at the moment with this next phase of what we're doing. And I think once we get that process moving, then I think it would be good to, bring in the next phase of how do we get this message out there that we're implementing this. My fear, like with everything, is our bandwidth is limited, and I do outreach campaigns before we kind of get the meat and potatoes poured out. But not pour cold water on it, because I do think it is equally important to actually getting the work done.
Yeah, and Jonathan, my question wasn't more to like what kind of action can we take right now. It's more to that these kind of questions that we're bringing up to you, that if we had a better understanding of how the unit looks at public information as a whole, that how we could better educate ourselves to that system and how we could affect it in our decisions. So, but again, that's with the consideration of not wanting to cross over into asking too much of staff or asking to do something operationally that staff's not already going to achieve on their own.
Right, and remember that we have that mailer going out here in the near future for all the district residents with all of the defensible space and evacuation information in it.
Right.
The group that won't get that are the people who have lots, right? They don't live here. They don't have most likely an address on file here. So the message is getting out there. Like, in my eyes, it's what is the message when we do the next step, right? How do we message the fact implement the vegetation abatement program in response to the concern?
That is a good point, though. Are we doing something individually now that we've identified those parcels and that they'll be categorized into priority? Will there be separate letters sent out to those individual lot owners of this is the changes that are coming to you?
They'll get a notice to abate.
Okay.
Yep.
And we talked about you get 3 notices in a series, but then changing the process after that so that it doesn't just fall off into the district attorney's office will get back to you. Is part of this plan following up on your thoughts expressed before about how that might be more effective or more action oriented? Less frustrating on your side?
So the way the program, the vegetation abatement program will work is the good thing about it is it does have a defined opening and it does have a defined closing, right? We go out and we inspect the lots. We determine which ones have priority, which ones need to get taken care of. We notify the property owner. They either do or they don't. And then if they don't, then we take care of it and it's done.
Okay.
The issue with that is it's a predefined program with a predefined budget and everything's set and we can pass it and the wheels are rolling on that machine.
Right.
It doesn't quite work that way with individual lots and correction notices because it doesn't fall within that program, because anybody can call at any time and we can go and inspect a lot and there could be a fire hazard that doesn't fall within the parameters or the timelines of the vegetation abatement program, especially if it's a yearly thing that happens before fire season. Halfway through the year, something could arise or conditions could change in which it would still merit mitigation and enforcement, but it wouldn't fall within the program. So this is going to have to be hand in hand with following up with our enforcement policies and procedures in addition to the selected lots. This is not either or, it's an addition to, essentially.
Okay. So now we've got a both and, we're gonna do this and we're gonna do this new thing. And that's going to be, and do you feel that is helpful? Again, it's a way forward that is defined and can be planned, and there's processes in place so that you don't just get to the point where it sort of stops. You're
Yeah,
waiting for the.
so essentially going back to our previous message about how do we get a public message and educate people in addition to all the things we're talking about today. It's just in line with what Chief Cox was saying. We'll take what we can, we'll bite off what we can chew right now. And right now, I think the biggest message that we could get to the public is the fact that fire prevention is not reactionary, right? It's fire prevention. And therefore we are going out and we now have this program that will abate lots before anything happens, before fire season. So that people will get the message that the fire department is being proactive in taking care of your lots and making sure that the property owners are held accountable. And I mean, it's a amazing and diverse community, but it's not a big community. So if people start realizing that the fire department's going to come clear your lot and you're going to pay to get it done our way or your way, you're going to want to get it done your way. And so you should probably get to it before we do. So it's more of an actions speak louder than words for now. And then once the system is up and running and we have a fully processed set of lots on a yearly basis, yearly schedule, then we can start really pushing the message out there and getting in touch with the community members and pushing that the PIO and the different social medias to coincide with the fact that look at all these things that you have to do. This is the way we're doing them on these lots that we're enforcing. Take it as you will, and then we're off to the races. It's kind of a 1-2 punch, but one's got to come before two.
That's a great way forward. That's a great strategy, and I see it enacted. Like the RCD is using Twitter and Facebook to send out the messages right now about what they're doing in Quarry Park, and the video you get is the limbs coming down. So what you're saying is you're going to prescribe a process to them and give them their choice. You can do it, or we'll be doing it for you, and in a way that makes it obvious it's to their advantage to take care of it themselves, which is to our advantage too. So that's, thank you very much. So do you all feel comfortable and clear about what you'd like to see happen at the board meeting on the 22nd?
I think it's a pretty clear path forward. I will go back with Gene and Kai and just make sure that we are good on the legal side to do the next notice to abate and the declaration of a nuisance. And then I think I'll do the action plan as well and make sure we have that and those documents as part of that staff report, as part of that board document as well.
I feel comfortable, Cynthia, from my short amount of time on the board. This is the process that we follow, and it'll include a resolution so we'll take action that evening to move this forward. This is typical. Staff brings always a very strong, thorough report. The other board directors will have that information before the board meeting, so they'll be able to read through it all and have any questions. And I think, at the end of the evening, everything we've discussed will be ready to be put into place.
Well, it's excellent that we have a board that is so supportive of the staff and operations, and I hope that's really how you feel, is that we as a board do care very much that we're backing up with resources the things we are operationally requesting to be done, because otherwise, burnout. So again, Dream Team, we don't want any of this we realize this is a big step. It's a big ask, and we want to be sure that you're allowing us to ask the question of the other board members to be certain that you have the resources that you need to do it. We're just in full support of all the work you're doing to create this new plan in response to the public.
Perfect. And I do have one other thing to share. This was the what we got back for the fire danger rating sign for the El Granada station.
Mhm.
We're leaning towards doing the version 2, the one on the right that has the logos on each side. The only other thought we had was asking for one more sub sign on the bottom that just says red flag warning. So days that have a red flag warning, that we could put that up there. But this is what they came back with.
They look good. How will they be updated? And where would they be located?
Yeah, so it'll be on the corner, kind of where the engines come out at Fire Station 41.
Right?
41. And then the rating will be updated by the on-duty crews there, based on the National Fire Danger rating.
Okay.
Jonathan, again, I can't see whatever it is your screen has. I don't know why. This is Gene. I can't see it.
Gene, it was just a photo of a fire danger rating sign.
Okay.
That seems, again, I've expressed that kind of visual content is always powerful. Even as individuals, when we drive by those things, we pay attention. I referenced the one that's at the east side of Crystal Springs. How you look at that sign each time. So I would just think more is better. If there's other locations, we can do that. I'm all for starting with it at El Granada and looking forward to seeing if we get that message in on each end of the entrance, the north and south end of town somehow, especially with that new gateway into intersection into 40 and Main Street, that, perhaps we can add something. Again, that's not our property. It's less visible. If you put it on the property, I understand the restrictions of that, but I would think that kind of messaging is something hopefully we can build on, whether it takes a partnership with the city or Caltrans or somebody else's property, that more is better. So I'll just share that opinion, my personal opinion.
Cool. Yep.
Thank you for all the work that went into the sign.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And this is just a smaller question. There's a lot of brush in front of 41, between 41 and the ocean. And there's wires through that brush. That's a totally separate question from anything we're talking about today. But are there plans for that?
So that's been brought up many times before. It is designated as a riparian area. So a lot of the brush removal has been restricted based on the zoning there, as well as all the wires and everything else there are communication lines. They're not power lines.
Okay.
So while it does leave a little bit to be desired on the aesthetic side, it's not really something that the fire marshal's office has any enforcement on, because of the area that it's in and the fact that it's not really it's not power lines, so not really a fire hazard per se, but it has been brought up numerous times.
Thank you for indulging me. I'll back right off. Thank you very, very much. We appreciate the extra time you've taken this month with us with these meetings, as well as other, the conversations we've had to get all of this accomplished in a short period of time. Thank you.
Let me ask you the important question, Jonathan. Then, do we have a need in context to the purpose of having additional meetings now that staff report's been produced and we're on track to present that to the entire board, of having our final meeting that was scheduled for, I don't even know what the date was, next week? Is that?
I think this is it. I think we moved from the 16th to the 9th so that we could get any motions onto the board agenda before the 72 hours in advance posting requirement.
Okay.
I think does that sound right, folks?
Yes, you're right. So we have to basically have all of our Crossed and I's dotted by Friday morning of next week. So we wanted to give ourselves some runway from then.
Good. Okay, understood. Thank you.
Well, it's great to be on track. Thank you.
I have nothing further. Is there anything else to be added?
Do you want to ask us any questions?
No, I think this has been really productive. Thank you guys for your time and attention on this. It's going to be a big step, I think, to get this next round done.
Is it a step that you probably would have just made anyway? Is this it, or has this public focus on this changed the course of action at all?
Yeah, so I think the meetings gives us a better sense of what the appetite, right? As the elected representatives of the community, you have a much better grasp of what the desire is in those areas. So I think you bring that forward to the group, saying this is really important and this is a good step for the community. And that's what we're here to do, right? Is take your guidance on these issues and implement what the community really wants.
Well, thank you so much. The other community besides El Granada that we hear from a lot is Highland Terrace and that new Pacific Ridge community that's being built up there.
Yep. Yeah.
In the urban woodland interface, smack in the right?
Development going on, that's for sure.
Yeah, and that's been a 3-decade journey to that, so it's very deep within the community as well as what has to be addressed. So I agree.
We heard a lot at the Fire Safe Council about other communities that are enacting WUI construction restrictions, that additional properties are not going to be developed in the woodland urban interface. Is that a development question that you hear?
Yeah, it's a land use decision. There's a lot of new regulations surrounding land use in the very high fire hazard severity zones. It to date has not got, it's been talked about for years. It to date hasn't gotten much traction, because there is such a counter argument to that about the housing crisis that is pervasive across the state. So it goes both ways. I take it with a grain of salt. I don't think we're going to see a wide ceasing of construction in the WUI. I think that kind of horse has already left the barn, and now we're just figuring out how to build it better and get people in and out a little bit more effectively.
Thank you. Is the piece that is being done in Montera that the Fire Safe Council talked about, it's a big property that's been not mitigated for a long time, and now there's forward motion on that. Is that public property or private property?
Austin can correct me. I believe it's Caltrans property up there.
Yeah, it's a right away, I believe.
Yeah, it was originally slated to be Highway 1 before it went through, before they came up with the tunnel idea, essentially. And then, so essentially, if you look at a wide swath of parcel maps and look at the individual private properties, you'll actually see a giant swath of no actual parcels in that area.
Okay.
So it's a Caltrans right of way essentially, and Caltrans has jurisdiction there. And we've been in contact with them extensively, and there's a number of things going on there, and it's a work in progress, but at least it is working right now. So.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. Such helpful information. That's it for me.
All right.
Okay, without anything further, I think we can adjourn.
Yeah, they're doing the minutes. You'll get them when they're ready.
Okay, thank you so much,
Okay.
Gene. Thanks for
Thank
switching
you
your
again,
times.
Firelight.
Thank you all so much.